I wonder whether or not a way to reverse engineer one's way to productivity, a reverse hack our way to productivity, would be to think about all the ways that you would benevolently deploy distraction for a competitor, and then ask yourself which of those you're still engaging in, and think of yourself as sort of in a competition with the highly distracted version of oneself.
Yeah.
Because I think that one task, I think for us today is to try and think about, for the person listening to this who's not an academic, who's hearing about all this distraction, that enjoys some social media, how can they bring about the best version of themselves in terms of productivity, but also presence for family, presence with self, et cetera. And if one isn't in a competitive environment, then maybe it's about setting up different mental maps of the self, and then trying to pit them against one another and be the best version, literally.
I think that's interesting, right? Like, think about what would be, I like this idea of thinking about my competitor. What would really give me a leg up? Am I doing this? But I would also add in here, this is like a slower productivity type idea. You figure out the thing you really care about. You figure out what you would need to do to really show up for that thing. And then if you're doing that, like, give yourself a break on everything else too. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm this way with if I'm getting in my writing time, I have to write. I'm very uncomfortable when I'm not writing. I just write all the time. Articles, books, I'm always writing. If I'm getting in my writing time, then it's like, okay, the rest of the day, maybe like this week was a kind of a loss. Like, the kids were homesick, or there was a crisis at the university or whatever. And like, I'm just trying to keep that under control and like have good productivity habits, and like don't context switch too much and don't be too distracted, but still have your fixed schedule productivity, like end at 5:30 every day, and time block, and try to be reasonable with that time. Limit the damage. But if I'm doing the thing that ultimately really matters, I'm going to be pretty happy with it. So it's like moving the definition of, am I happy with what I'm producing, away from a quantity metric and to this more, am I aggregating the quality reps? And I think in weightlifting, this would make a lot more sense, right? It's like, there's a certain number of, like, a certain amount of time under load each muscle group needs to be on. And like, if I'm doing that, I'm happy if I'm, weightlifting, right? There's no notion of like, why didn't I exercise 5 hours more, or this or that? And so I sometimes try to think about my core intellectual work that way. Like, if I'm getting in the core deep reps on the thing I care most about, which for me is almost always writing, then like the rest, I just want to, it's like damage control.